Deconstruction is a word that's been around for a while, but it's become somewhat of a buzzword in the last couple decades as people have started using it to describe the actions of those who have spent years in a particular faith, often Christianity, and are now questioning the convictions they used to hold. As this has become more and more common, many longtime Christians who value their tradition are frightened by the idea of deconstruction and see it as universally bad. They're highly critical of those who would question their faith and challenge their spiritual assumptions or beliefs. On the other hand, if you read the comment section on any YouTube video where someone is describing how their process of deconstruction led to them abandoning their faith, you'll find plenty of fellow skeptics applauding them and congratulating them for finally seeing the light. But for those of us interested in pursuing objective truth, maybe it's worthwhile to ask ourselves, is deconstruction a good or bad thing? And in order to answer that question, we need to consider our motives. Some people deconstruct just because they enjoy something to the effect of intellectual arson. Perhaps they're just mad, and they take perverse pleasure in watching power structures or what is perceived as being sacred or traditional burn down. However, these spiritual pyromaniacs often have nothing of substance to offer after the smoke clears. Deconstruction might be motivated by accurate knowledge, but still exercised without love. Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. When we know something that others don't, there's an inclination to want to share it with others. And this can be good if the goal is to improve and strengthen others. But sometimes it becomes more about our desire to flex our intellectual muscles than actually helping others find truth. The Bible shows us a better framework for deconstruction through the example of Jesus himself. He was involved in a kind of deconstruction when he challenged the traditions of the scribes and Pharisees of his day. However, Jesus' deconstruction was not an intellectual flex or spiritual arson. Certainly, there were concepts and traditions in Jesus' day which needed to be taken apart, but his purpose in tearing them down was to rebuild something sound and good. Good deconstruction doesn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It separates the wheat from the weeds rather than burning the entire field, like we read in Matthew 13 and verse 30. Deconstruction is not an end. It's a means to a better way of understanding. Granted, not everyone can easily see the need for deconstruction, especially those who treasure their traditions or the status quo. When Jesus came into this world, he was opposed by many people when he didn't meet their expectations. For example, it seems that some were charging Jesus with seeking to destroy the law or the prophets because he had challenged what they had heard it was said to those of old. Jesus clarified that he did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. When Jesus deconstructed the misconceptions and misapplications of the law of Moses, he wasn't trashing the law. Actually, after Jesus was killed for teaching these things, he defeated death and arose to remind his disciples of what he had taught them previously. He said that all things must be fulfilled which were written in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms concerning me. Nevertheless, in pointing to himself as the fulfillment of the law and the prophets, Jesus did render the old covenant obsolete, which is pointed out in Hebrews chapter 8 and verse 13. From the perspective of most Jews, this would have seemed pretty destructive. But the Hebrews writer points out that this deconstruction was essential if Jesus was going to serve as high priest who would reconcile both Jews and Gentiles to their Creator and to one another in one body. The Jewish temple in Jerusalem, made with hands, was literally destroyed, as Jesus said it would be, as recorded in Matthew 24. And in a figurative sense, heaven and earth did pass away from a Jewish perspective. The middle wall of division was broken down. The law of commandments that created this tension was abolished in Jesus' crucifixion. But Jesus' end goal was not just deconstruction. His goal was the fulfillment of an eternal plan to create in himself one new man that he might reconcile us all to God in one body through the cross, putting to death the enmity. That's Ephesians chapter 2. Now we are built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom the whole building, being joined together, grows into a holy temple in the Lord, in whom you also are being built together for a habitation of God in the Spirit. None of this could have happened without some kind of deconstruction. Now, we must be careful not to destroy what is true and righteous. Yet we also have to humbly acknowledge that through the years, many things have been constructed by men which have been shown not to be of God. If we're holding on to those things, we need to deconstruct in love. Those of us who are confident in our faith may get tired of or annoyed by having our own beliefs challenged and our assumptions questioned. But unless we want to repeat the failures of the generations of the past, we have to follow Paul's guidance in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 to test everything, hold fast what is good. If we're claiming to be Christians, we should work to be people whose ears and hearts are open and will compare what we hear with the Scriptures. Let's be prepared to deconstruct our ideas and traditions so our lives can be reconstructed according to the will of God.